I hid my identity for 12 years. My family didn't know who I was. Amira's days became structured routines. Wake before dawn, light the charcoal, prep ingredients, manage the morning rush, clean, restock, study. It was hard, but the consistency gave her peace. She felt something she hadn't felt before: control. She was no longer reacting to fear, violence, or judgment. Every decision she made now was hers. But survival in Lagos was never smooth. One rainy morning, the shop got flooded. Water crept in through the cracked walls and soaked through the sacks of rice and gari. Everything was ruined. For most, this would have been a pause. For Amira, it was a moment of rebirth. She gathered the dry portions, cleaned the floors, and wrote up an inventory of every item they lost. She took it to the landlord, pleaded for help, and offered to repay slowly. The landlord, stunned by her maturity, waived 2 months' rent instead. By the time she was 20, she had earned respect from traders and customers alike. Mechanics, students, and even civil servants in the area came just to eat and talk to her. Some tried to flirt, others proposed, but Amira kept everyone at arm's length. She had built a new name, a new face, a new story. But love, trust, intimacy, that would mean revealing herself, and that terrified her more than anything. She often watched customers laugh with their families and silently wondered, what is it like to have a mother hug you without suspicion? What does it feel like to have a father call you my pride? One night, she got drunk for the first time. She wasn't a drinker, but it was her birthday, technically. The date she chose for herself anyway. Mama Efe had passed the year before, and loneliness weighed heavily on her. She sat on the steps of the shop and sipped cheap liquor from a sachet. The street was quiet, the sky cloudy, and the ache in her chest grew louder than the silence around her. She began to cry. Not the kind of cry that came with tears alone, but the deep, gut-wrenching sobs of someone who had buried too much for too long. She whispered to the darkness, "Why didn't anyone fight for me? Why didn't they ever look for me?" And then she laughed bitterly. Maybe I never mattered enough. The next morning, she woke up on the shop floor with a customer knocking on the shutters. Time moved again. Months passed. Her food business expanded. She started posting food pictures on Instagram with small quotes underneath. Always inspirational, always vague, always carrying the hidden message that she had been through hell and survived. She got more followers. Young girls started messaging her. "Auntie Amira, how did you become so successful? I want to be like you one day." Some called her a mentor, others a big sister. She responded to every message like it were sacred. She offered advice, encouragement, and even helped 1 or 2 girls find small jobs in nearby salons. She was becoming what she had never had, someone who saw others. And yet, every time she walked past a newsstand and saw missing person flyers, she panicked. Her picture was never there. Her name never came up. But still, she feared it. One time she saw a flyer with a girl who looked like her. Same complexion, similar smile. It wasn't her, but it shook her so much she hid indoors for days. It was in those days that she started writing her story, not to publish, not to share, but to remember. She wrote about a little girl who used to sing alone in her room and imagine applause, about a teenager who once hid under a kitchen table just to escape her father's beatings, about a young woman who found home in a stranger's kindness, about the moments that shaped her and the ones that shattered her. It was in this fragile state that a woman named Kemi entered her life. Kemi was a customer who worked in PR. She loved Amira's cooking and often brought her colleagues for lunch. One day she casually said, "Why don't you turn this place into a franchise? You've got the potential." That suggestion ignited something in Amira. For months, she stayed up after RK sketching business plans, Googling franchise models, and watching free YouTube videos on entrepreneurship. She pitched her expansion idea to a small investor in the area, using charm and a clear vision. The investor laughed at first, but by the end of the meeting, he was intrigued. He gave her a small loan, not enough to build an empire, but enough to take a risk, and she did. She opened a second shop in Surulere. It wasn't fancy, but it carried the same warmth, taste, and efficiency. She trained staff the way Mama Efe trained her, firm but fair. Her followers doubled, her bank account grew. Her fears? Still there, but quieter. And yet, no matter how far she climbed, the ghost of Chidinma still followed her. One evening, a group of youth volunteers visited her shop after a nearby seminar. They laughed loudly, took selfies, and tagged her business online. She noticed one of the boys staring at her strangely. He looked no older than 18. Sharp eyes, soft-spoken. When their order was delayed, he approached her politely. "Excuse me, ma, sorry to bother you, but have we met before?" Amira froze. The boy smiled nervously. "I swear, you look familiar. I think you look like my sister." She laughed it off. "I get that a lot." But as the boy walked back to his table, she felt her hands trembling. Later that night, she checked his Instagram from the shop tag. His name, Chuka. And for the first time in 12 years, she saw a face from home. Her brother was alive, grown, smiling and searching. In one of his posts, he wrote, "Even if I never find you, Chidinma, I pray you're safe. I forgive you. I just want to know that you're okay." She dropped her phone. Her breath caught in her chest. The world around her tilted. Suddenly, Amira's carefully built reality began to crack. 12 years of silence. 12 years of pretending. 12 years of being someone else. And now, fate had opened the door to everything she had buried. The question now wasn't whether the past would catch up with her. It already had. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe for more enticing stories from Tales Unfolded. Let's continue. The night after Amira saw the name Chuka on her screen, sleep abandoned her. Her phone lay on her chest, still open to his profile. She stared at the boy's face over and over again, memorizing the eyes that used to follow her around the compound like a shadow. He looked like their mother now. High cheekbones, dark eyes, and the soft, guarded smile. He was taller now, almost a man, but there was still something childlike about his gaze, something that pulled a thread deep inside her chest. For hours, she sat by the window, phone in hand, watching the city of Lagos shimmer and breathe, unaware that her entire identity was crumbling inside a woman who had become everything but what she once was. By morning, Amira felt like a stranger in her own skin. She wore her usual gold earrings, applied the same nude lipstick, wrapped her scarf perfectly, and walked into Mama F's kitchen with her usual quiet grace. But inside, something was unraveling. Her staff greeted her as always. "Good morning, Auntie Amira," but their voices sounded distant, muted. Every time someone mentioned the youth volunteers from the previous day, her stomach turned. She knew she had to see him again. She didn't know why or how, but the moment she saw Chuka's face, something opened in her that had long been locked away, longing. For days, she avoided social media. She threw herself into work. She expanded her delivery menu, negotiated new partnerships, and even filmed a cooking tutorial video for her YouTube channel. But no matter how loud the world became, the silence inside her wouldn't fade. Late one evening, while scrolling through Instagram under a fake account she often used to monitor trends, she found herself searching for Chuka again. This time, she noticed something she hadn't seen before, a pinned post. It was a childhood picture of them together, a blurry, sunlit photo of a little boy and an older girl playing with a wheelbarrow in front of a dusty compound. Her arms were wrapped around him protectively. The caption broke her. 12 years ago, my sister, my friend. I still don't know why, but I hope she knows I never stopped looking. Amira stared at the photo, heart pounding. A memory flashed violently into her mind, a rainy afternoon sneaking leftover moi moi under the bed to her when she wasn't allowed to eat. He was barely 5. He used to call her Big D. She used to hum lullabies to him when he cried at night. They shared secrets. She taught him how to write his name. And then one day, she was gone. No note, no goodbye, just gone. Her chest ached. Regret twisted through her like a knife. For the first time in years, she whispered her old name aloud. Chidinma. It tasted like ash. It felt like betrayal. She hadn't just run away from a violent home, she had abandoned the only soul who ever loved her without judgment. The next day, she took a bold step. She walked into a local community event organized by the NGO she knew Chuka volunteered for. Dressed plainly in a white blouse and denim skirt, with no makeup and a scarf covering most of her hair, she blended easily into the crowd. She walked slowly through the booths, eyes scanning, pretending to look at flyers while her heart thudded in anticipation. And then she saw him, Chuka. Wearing a black t-shirt with Rebuilders Foundation printed on it, speaking passionately to a small group of young girls about confidence, self-worth, and surviving hardship. Amira stood frozen. He had become everything she prayed he would become: strong, compassionate, driven. His voice was deeper, but the cadence was familiar. He spoke with the same fire she once had. She wanted to run up to him and scream, "I'm here, it's me," but her legs wouldn't move. She watched as the girls clapped, as Chuka smiled politely, and as a small girl leaned into his side. He laughed and said something she couldn't hear. Her eyes filled with tears. Suddenly, someone touched her shoulder. It was one of the volunteers. "Hi, would you like to sign up for mentorship?" Amira stammered something about donating food for their next outreach and quickly scribbled her name, Amira Yusuf, and her contact number. She didn't realize until later that her handwriting trembled. That night, she was invited to a small donors' dinner for the NGO. She almost didn't go, but something compelled her. Curiosity, guilt, maybe even hope. She arrived late, sat at the back of the modest hall, and tried to stay invisible, until she heard her name, or rather, Amira Yusuf, announced by the event host. "Please welcome Miss Amira Yusuf, founder of Mama Efe's Kitchen and one of our most recent supporters." She stood, half smiling, and nodded at the polite applause. Chuka turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, the room faded. She quickly looked away. After the event, he approached her. Polite, curious. "Hi. Sorry, we met before, right, at the food place?" She nodded. "Yes," briefly. He studied her face. "I'm sorry, you just look familiar." She smiled tightly. "I get that a lot." "I'm Chuka," he said. She knew more than he could imagine, but she only said, "Nice to meet you." For the next few weeks, they kept crossing paths. Chuka invited her to speak at a youth outreach. She declined, then later changed her mind. At the event, she told her story. Half of it, the version where she was a homeless girl who lost her family due to a conflict and found hope through kindness. It was close enough to the truth to be believable. The crowd clapped. Chuka clapped too. Afterward, he approached her again. "You know, your story reminds me of someone, my sister. She disappeared 12 years ago." Her breath caught. "I'm sorry to hear that." "She was strong, brave, a bit stubborn," he laughed. "She would have liked you." She turned her face away, tears pressing at the corners of her eyes. "Maybe she's closer than you think," she whispered, too softly for him to hear. But the illusion couldn't last forever. One evening, Chuka posted a short video on Instagram, a throwback clip from when they were kids, filmed secretly by their neighbor. In the video, Chidinma was dancing with Chuka in the rain, barefoot, happy, wild. Amira had forgotten it even existed. And in that clip, at the very end, she turned to the camera, smiled, and yelled, "My name is Chidinma Naji. I will be great one day. Watch me." The post blew up. It reached one of Amira's old classmates from secondary school who now lived in Lagos. That classmate had been watching Amira's success story from afar and recognized the face immediately. She messaged Chuka privately, "I think I know where your sister is." The message shattered the walls Amira had built. Within days, social media buzzed with whispers. Is Amira Yusuf really Chidinma Naji? Some believed it. Others didn't. But then a gossip blog picked it up. Then a TV host mentioned it. Then customers began whispering in the shop. When her staff approached her, confused and scared, Amira told them to take the day off. She locked the shop and sat alone. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her messages. Chuka hadn't messaged her yet, but he would. And he did. One simple line, "Tell me it's not true," or "Please, tell me it is." She stared at the message for hours. And then finally she replied, "It is." There was no response. She waited. Hours turned into a day. The next morning, her shop was surrounded by reporters. Her brand page was flooded with messages, some sympathetic, others cruel. Sponsors began pulling out. A local pastor called her a liar during a live stream. Her world, built with so much care, was unraveling. And then her phone rang. Unknown number. She picked it up. "Amira," the voice said. Quiet, controlled. She recognized it. Her mother, the voice she hadn't heard in 12 years. "Come home." Amira said nothing. She couldn't speak. Her mother didn't beg, didn't cry, just said again, "Come home. Your brother needs to see you. And so do I." The call ended. Amira sank to the floor weeping. Not for the business, not for the exposure, not for the shame, but because she realized something. After 12 years of running, the truth had finally caught up with her, and the time for hiding was over. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe for more enticing stories from Tales Unfolded. Let's continue. The shop remained closed for days. The blinds stayed down, the lights were off. The air inside was stale and quiet, filled with the echoes of what used to be laughter, chopping sounds, frying oil, and the heartbeat of a woman who had made a new life from scratch. Amira sat on the floor, her back against the wall, phone silent in her hand. Her heart beat slowly but heavily, like a distant drum counting down to something she had no name for. All she could do was breathe and try not to fall apart. Outside, Lagos moved like it always did, impatient, distracted, and fast. The city didn't care who was falling or flying, but Amira felt every second like a blade on her skin. The whispers had turned into noise. Online, the news trended for days. Her name, both of them, filled headlines and blog tags. Amira Yusuf exposed as missing Igbo girl Chidinma Naji. She lied for 12 years. What is she hiding? People speculated wildly. Some said she was running from a murder. Others claimed she had joined a cult. Few spoke of abuse. Few imagined she had been running from anything more than shame. Truth rarely makes good headlines. The lies are always more clickable. The day after the phone call with her mother, Amira did not leave her apartment. She turned her phone to airplane mode, then off entirely. She didn't eat. She barely drank. When she finally rose, her reflection startled her. Her eyes were sunken. Her scarf was loose. She didn't recognize the woman staring back, and in that moment, it struck her. She had built her life on becoming unrecognizable, so much so that even she couldn't find herself anymore. She fell to her knees in the small bathroom and wept like a child, loud, raw, and empty. She cried for Chuka. She cried for the girl who ran away. She cried for the woman who had survived alone. And most of all, she cried because she didn't know what came next. When she finally stepped outside, it was night. Lagos had cooled down a little. The breeze touched her skin gently, like a mother she never had. She walked aimlessly for a while through quiet streets, past closed shops and dim streetlights. At one junction, she saw a small church, low-roofed, painted white, with a wooden cross and a hand-painted sign that read, "Jehovah is watching." Without thinking, she entered. It was empty, but the door was open. She sat on the back pew and looked up at the altar. There were no candles, no choir, no noise, just silence. She didn't pray. She couldn't. But she whispered, "If you see me, if you remember me, I'm tired." The next day, she replied to her mother's message with 2 words, "I'll come." Her return to Enugu was nothing like the movies. There was no dramatic music, no teary-eyed crowd waiting at the park. She arrived on a dull Wednesday morning on a cheap bus, her small bag in hand, a scarf wrapped around her head. She wore plain clothes, walked quietly through the familiar roads, heart pounding with every step. Her feet knew the way even if her soul had tried to forget. Her family's compound looked the same rusted gate, same mango tree swaying above, same cracks on the wall. But the energy was different. It felt older, slower, like a house that had been waiting. Her hand trembled as she pushed the gate open. Her mother was sitting on a plastic chair in the front yard, peeling bitter leaf. She looked up, their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Amira felt frozen, the world stilled. And then her mother stood slowly, dropping the bowl at her feet. She walked forward. Her eyes glistened, but her face was unreadable. "You're thinner," her mother said. Amira opened her mouth to respond, but found no words. They stood face to face. The space between them carried years of pain, silence, and longing. Her mother raised a hand. Amira flinched, but the hand came to rest gently on her cheek. "I thought you died," her mother whispered. "I did," Amira replied. "But I came back." And then, her mother pulled her into an embrace that shook them both. There were no tears at first, just trembling. Then sobs, then silence, then more sobs. They stayed like that for a long time. Mother and daughter, strangers and blood, guilt and grace in a single hold. Inside, the house looked different, cleaner. The atmosphere had changed. Her father's portrait still hung on the wall, but it was dusty, and no one acknowledged it. Chuka wasn't home. He had gone to visit friends in a nearby town, unaware she would arrive early. Her mother cooked silently while Amira sat at the edge of the living room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Neither of them knew how to talk anymore. That night, they sat together in the backyard. Her mother spoke first. "Your father, he died 6 years ago." Amira didn't answer. "He was shot during a robbery. They said he fought back too much. He always fought back." Still, Amira said nothing. Her mother sighed. "After you left, things broke in this house. Chuka started having nightmares. I stopped going to church for a while. Nobody talked about you. It was like you never existed. But I prayed. Every night, I prayed for your ghost. I never expected you'd return in flesh." Amira looked at her mother, eyes red. "Why didn't you come for me? Why didn't you look?" "I didn't know how," her mother said, voice low. "I thought you hated me. Maybe I hated myself too." They sat in silence after that, two broken women beneath a quiet sky, surrounded by the noise of crickets and the heavy truth of everything that had never been said. The next morning, Chuka came home. He froze at the door when he saw her. For one long, unbearable moment, they stared at each other. Then, slowly, his eyes filled with tears. He dropped his bag, walked forward, stopped. "Is it really you?" Amira nodded, speechless. He broke. He walked straight into her arms and collapsed against her. "I wait, Ed," he cried. "I never stopped. I never stopped." "I'm sorry," she whispered, holding him tight. "I'm so sorry." They held each other like lost children finding home again. For the next week, she stayed with them. They talked. She told her story, the real one, not the crafted version. The beatings, the nights she left, the hunger, the fear, the woman who saved her, the years of building, the years of hiding. Her mother listened with her head bowed, hands clasped. Chuka cried more than once. Then it was their turn. Her mother confessed the truth about her own silence, about the fear of standing up to a husband she feared more than she loved, about the guilt that ate her every year Amira was gone. She admitted to going to church every week and praying under her breath, "Bring her home, dead or alive. Let me see her once before I die." Chuka told her about the years he spent hoping, how he refused to believe the neighbors who said she was dead, how he started volunteering because he believed someone somewhere needed the kind of rescue she never got. They wept together, ate together, remembered things they had buried, and slowly, painfully, something new began to form. Forgiveness. Not the easy kind, not the instant kind, but the honest, bleeding kind that takes time, confession, and choice. By the end of the week, Amira stood before her father's grave. She said nothing for a long time. Then she whispered, "You tried to break me, and for a while you did. But I became someone, not because of you, but in spite of you. And I forgive you, not for you, but for me." As the wind passed gently over her face, she closed her eyes and finally felt free. But healing wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something new, and what came next would test everything she had learned. The world still knew her as the fraud, the liar, the runaway, and now she would have to face the world again, not as Amira, not as Chidinma, but as herself, fully, finally, and fearlessly. And so she returned to Lagos, not to hide, but to rebuild, this time with nothing to prove and everything to live for. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe for more enticing stories from Tales Unfolded. Let's continue. Lagos hadn't changed. The traffic still shouted. The sun still beat down like judgment. The streets still pulsed with life, indifferent to one woman's scars or another's healing. But something inside Amira had shifted. She had gone to the place she thought she'd never return to, faced the ghosts she thought she buried, and come out breathing. Different, older, bruised, but whole. She didn't expect perfection or applause. She came back for closure, for purpose, and maybe, just maybe, to rebuild a life no longer based on survival, but on truth. She returned to the shop on a Monday morning. The keys felt heavier in her hand. The glass door bore fingerprints from weeks past, and someone had posted a printout of the blog story about her, the girl who lied for 12 years. She pulled it off, tore it in half, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. Everything was just as she left it. The fryers cold, the shelves dusty, the freezer humming faintly. She walked around slowly, touching things, not just for inventory, but for memory. This place wasn't built by Chidinma. It wasn't handed to her by family or luck. Amira built it with her bare hands, night by night, sweat by sweat. And now, with the world watching her name trend for all the wrong reasons, she would choose what happened next. The first thing she did was hire a cleaner. Then, she called Sei. Sei had gone silent after the truth came out. Her messages went unanswered, and Amira didn't push. But now, she needed to speak, not as a woman with secrets, but as a sister with something real to say. When Sei finally walked into the shop, the tension was thick. Her arms were crossed, her face was guarded. "You should have told me," Sei said coldly. Amira nodded. "I know. I defended you, told people you were misunderstood, that you built this life honestly, but you lied, Amira, to everyone, including me." Amira didn't flinch. "You're right, I did, and I'm sorry, but I wasn't trying to cheat anyone, I was trying to survive." Say's eyes shimmered with anger and pain. "You didn't even trust me enough to let me in. That hurts." "I didn't trust anyone," Amira replied, voice steady. "Not even myself. I spent years hiding so deeply that I forgot who I was. But I'm done hiding. You have every right to walk away, but I had to try." Say looked at her long and hard. Then she stepped forward and hugged her, tightly, angrily, tearfully. "I'm still mad at you," she said into her ear. "I know," Amira replied, holding her close, "but thank you." From that day forward, things moved slowly but purposefully. The shop reopened under a new name, Found. No slogans, no elaborate marketing, just a single word painted across the glass in gold. It was a statement, a declaration. And soon, curious customers returned, some skeptical, some supportive, most just hungry. The food hadn't changed, the story had. And that brought a strange kind of respect. People started talking, not just about the scandal, but about the strength it took to return. Some women came just to see the woman who survived 12 years with no one. Some whispered Chidinma when they thought she wasn't listening. She let them. She no longer flinched at her name. Then came the interviews. The first one was from an online journalist who had reached out repeatedly. She wanted to talk about identity, survival, and rebuilding, not the gossip. Amira was hesitant but said yes. The video went viral. She sat before the camera in a plain blouse, no makeup, scarf tied gently. She spoke slowly. No tears, just facts. "I left home at 15, she began, not because I hated my family, but because I was afraid I wouldn't survive there. I changed my name not to deceive, but to stay alive. I became Amira because Chidinma was always in danger. For 12 years, I lived with the fear that someone would recognize me and drag me back to a place I barely escaped. But I also built a life. I worked hard, I gave jobs, I made peace with my past, and now I want to live in truth with no shame." By the end of the video, there were thousands of comments, some cruel, many kind. Messages poured in from young girls, from women in abusive homes, from mothers who lost daughters, from fathers who suddenly wanted to listen. Amira's inbox overflowed with pain, gratitude, and prayers. One message read, "I watched your story with my daughter. We cried together. Thank you for coming back, for choosing to live." But not everyone was ready to forgive. One evening, a man walked into the shop with a hard expression. He sat at the back, didn't order anything, and stared. Say asked if she should handle him. Amira walked over herself. "You're the girl," the man said, voice laced with something sharp. "From the news." Amira stood still. "Yes, I am. My wife follows your story. She thinks you're brave." He scoffed. "But you lied. You fooled everyone." "I did," Amira answered calmly, "but not to gain anything, just to keep breathing." The man leaned forward. "People like you make it harder for the rest of us to trust anything, so don't act like a hero." Amira nodded. "I'm not a hero, just a survivor, but thank you for coming." The man looked confused. Then he left. Amira stood still for a long moment. She didn't cry, didn't tremble, just inhaled deeply and went back to work. Her power was returning, slowly, one heartbeat at a time. Weeks passed. Then a letter came. Not an email, not a DM. A real letter posted from Enugu. It was from her former neighbor, Mama Obi, the one who used to whisper about her mother, the one who always watched from her window. In it, she wrote, "My daughter saw your interview on her phone and showed me. I didn't recognize the woman in the video at first. But when she said she was Chidinma, I remembered. I remembered the night you ran. I remembered how the street pretended not to see. I was one of them. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask questions. I just gossiped and judged. I was wrong. I am sorry. You deserve protection, not silence. I pray for you now, and I hope you forgive us." Amira read it 5 times, then folded it and tucked it into her journal. Healing wasn't always loud. Sometimes it came in letters, in quiet steps, in the way the world started calling you by your real name, with respect. She started speaking at women's shelters, not as a victim, but as a voice. She told her story not to relive the pain, but to remind others that their lives didn't have to end in the shadows. One woman stood up and said, "I've been waiting for someone to say what I couldn't." Amira smiled and replied, "Then say it now." She helped raise money for safe housing for girls in danger, donated part of her profits to organizations helping young survivors. She created an anonymous hotline, and she kept running the shop, quiet, steady, honest. Then one day, At a conference for women entrepreneurs, she was invited to speak. She stood on stage in front of hundreds, microphone in hand, screen behind her filled with just one sentence. "I died when I stopped recognizing myself, but I'm alive now." The crowd stood in applause before she even opened her mouth. She smiled, not shy, not small, whole. And she began to speak, not as the girl who ran, not as the fraud they once labeled, but as the woman who lived. The final scene fades on her laughing, head back, eyes bright. The kind of laugh that comes when you've walked through fire, lost everything, and still found the strength to rebuild it all, brick by brick, name by name, breath by breath. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe for more enticing stories from Tales Unfolded.